Hey everyone, Shadowwraith back again, this time with a really crazy Titan build that gives me some of the highest sword damage numbers I've ever seen. I didn't actually know it was possible to get this high, but to show you that it's not clickbait, here's some footage from Lost Sector. Boom, 347,000 damage off of a single sword heavy attack. And before people start dropping comments in like, oh yeah, well that was a normal Lost Sector, this isn't good in high level content. Well, here's some footage from a Master Nightfall that I was running with some teammates last week, and it's pretty good. It trashes champions. We were able to run this Nightfall in under 11 minutes. We could have got it in under 10, but we only did this for one night, so we were still working on the optimization strats. But when your teammates are running Breach and Clear, that 30% debuff lets you smoke things. And then you also have access to a super that can instantly delete champions, sometimes two of them. You're able to use blinding grenades, so you can just focus on the champion and delete it while the other adds are blind around. And then here's one more quick look at a unstoppable champion and a wanted guy who both instantly get melted. And then we're going to be running a scout rifle. Watch the ammo here, where as we get crit shots, it just keeps giving us ammo back. And every fourth headshot, we get a explosive round that will proc Warmind cells. Then we have Whirlwind Blade on our sword, so once we get that procced, we don't even need the Breach and Clear debuff to one-shot champions. It's pretty nice. And then against a boss, you jump in with your super, do a ton of damage, follow up with a sword heavy attack, and there you go. Master Nightfall boss dead. Farming run complete in under 11 minutes, which is pretty good. So if that looks interesting to you, great. Let's jump in with subclass. We're running Middle Tree Arc Titan, Code of the Missile. Your super is going to be Thunder Crash, which basically just turns you into a giant missile and does a ton of damage, especially with the exotic we're running. Our melee is Ballistic Slam, where you sprint and then jump into the air and use melee to turn into like a little missile, which pairs very nicely with Impact Conversion. Hitting targets with Ballistic Slam grants super energy and activates Inertial Override. Inertial Override is picking up ammo during a slide, reloads equipped weapon, and increases weapon damage. So those two things work together pretty nicely to get you some extra weapon damage. And then we're pairing that with our Pulse Grenade, but you can use whichever grenade you want, personal preference. And then I use Towering Barricade for the cover when reviving, but you could use Rally Barricade if you want like faster reloads. And then use whatever jump you're most comfortable with. I like Strafe Lift because it speeds up the jump. And then this build is built around this artifact mod, Energy Accelerant. Your Dragonfly, Chain Reaction, and Firefly explosions deal more damage, which is nice. But for some reason, how Bungie coded it, it also works with the Crown Splitter heavy attack. So you're doing double damage with your fully charged sword attack. They may patch this in the future. I don't know. I'll give you some options if they do patch it. But for now, this is a ton of fun. So we're going to be pairing this with blinding grenades on our ignition code because we can use this to stop champions. And then when we stop them, it'll also blind all of the little adds around them, which clears us to kill the champion without getting shot by everything. Then we've field prepped for increased ammo reserves and faster reload when crouching, and Demolitionist for some extra grenade energy on kills. These other two perks are optional, but highly recommend running blinding grenades. And then in the energy slot for our exotic, we're running Polaris Lance because it has a great exotic perk, the Perfect Fifth. Precision hits return ammo to the mag. Landing 4 precision hits loads a delayed solar explosive round for your next shot. That procs Warmind cells, and it does some pretty significant damage. So it's actually really nice for taking out barrier champions because you can just keep shooting. And then with the Catalyst, this also gets Dragonfly, which is buffed by the Energy Accelerant mod. So in lower level content, there are probably more optimal things that you can use. But this thing actually causes a ton of explosions, which is kind of fun. Then, as I mentioned, we're using Crown Splitter. We've got Whirlwind Blade for the increased sword damage. And then I was playing around with Flash Counter to get some of the super high damage numbers where I can block to debuff the target. This is good, but it also takes some of your sword energy, so it makes it harder to use a fully charged sword heavy attack. So you could also use something like Tireless Blade, and that might be more useful in a lot of circumstances, because generally you're stunning a champ before you hit them anyway, so you're not going to be using Flash Counter. So there are options on the sword. Basically all you need is Crown Splitter. It may actually work on some of the other swords. I didn't test them out, so if you know, drop a comment below. That'd be great. And then alternatives, you could use Ace of Spades in your kinetic slot because it also has Firefly, or you could use DMT. Dead Man's Tale is a good scout rifle as well. The new Raid hand cannon has Firefly, different ignition code, standard scout rifle, up to you. And then in the energy slot, you have some great options. Blinding Grenade Truth Teller is fun. For lower level content, Salvage or Salvo is absolutely ridiculous because Chain Reaction would get double damage, so that'll blow up pretty much everything. Anything running Dragonfly or Firefly, the new Raid Scout, is good. And then Sunshot, Cross put together a pretty cool Sunshot build that's very similar to this. You can check that one out. That's a lot of fun, and it'll chain through ads like wildfire. Alternatives to Crown Splitter, you could use a chain reaction rocket launcher, Soulless Scar if you have that from running some trials stuff. I really like the sword. If you really want optimal stuff, use Anarchy for like GMs and things, but I know not everybody has it, so play around. I highly recommend using the sword, but use something else if you really prefer. The sword is kind of the base for this build though. All right, on the artifact, I mentioned we're running Energy Accelerant. That also pairs pretty well with Warmind's Decree, so killing things with the Void Sword. That'll actually spawn a Warmind cell. I didn't feel like resetting my artifact, and I wanted to keep Breach and Clear up top, because if they do end up patching Energy Accelerant, you can just swap to Breach and Clear and still use the same build. It'll just be a tiny bit less effective because the sword damage won't be quite as crazy. And then Unstoppable Grenades, Surge Detonator, Grenade Launcher, Scavenger, and then whichever anti-champion mod you're running with your current primary. So you could use Overload Hand Cannon if you're going up against Overload champs. Jumping over to armor mods, we're going to be running Lucent Blade. When charged with light, we get a significant damage boost to swords for 5 seconds. And then the secondary perk, when we have another arc mod socketed, greatly increases the charge rate of our swords. Then we have Sword Ammo Finder, hands-on, the arc mod, so that we can get that increased charge rate for swords. And then we have a minor discipline mod for more grenades. You could switch out hands-on for something like Grenade Ammo Finder, but you wouldn't get that increased charge rate for the sword. On our arms, we have Wrath of Rasputin, which is great because it'll create Warmind cells off of solar splash damage, which Polaris Lance is great at doing. And then we've got Anti-Barrier Scout Rifle and Unstoppable Grenade Launcher, and then another minor discipline mod. And then for our exotic, we're running Curiass of the Falling Star. This will double the damage of your Thunder Crash super, and it gives you an overshield after you finish. This makes Thunder Crash actually a good super. I'm really glad they added this exotic. It was super underwhelming before. And then we have Taking Charge to become charged with light when picking up orbs, which we'll be creating a lot of due to Masterworks weapons. Then we have Sniper Damage Resist and Concussive Dampener. Highly recommend running some of these mods. And then we have a Recovery mod for increased health regen. And then on our boots, we're running Protective Light. While charged with light, you gain significant damage resistance when your shields are broken. This is huge for survivability. Highly recommend running it. If you don't have it, you could probably make something kind of similar using 2 of this season's mods that use Elemental Wells, so Reaping Wellmaker and Well of Tenacity. There's not a great replacement for Protective Light. If you don't have it, it's not that big of a deal, but if you do have it, highly recommend running it. And then we're running Grenade Launcher Scavenger and a Sword Scavenger, and then another Recovery mod just for that increased health regen. On our Titan Mark, we've got Global Reach for increased distance for Warmind cells, and then Energy Accelerant, of course, Surge Detonators for overload grenades, and a Discipline mod again for more grenades. And then I mentioned this before, but just to reiterate, if they nerf Energy Accelerant to not work with swords, just swap to Breach and Clear here, and you can still use the same build. You'll just be getting a 30% debuff instead of a 100% sword buff. So it'll still be usable, it just won't be quite as insane damage numbers. All right, I know we tossed a lot out, so as always, we'll jump into a Lost Sector. This is a legendary Lost Sector, and you can see you can one-shot all of the champions. I think I'm 19 levels over light here, so it's a pretty trivial Lost Sector at this point. Blinding Grenades blinds the ad, so you can just charge right in and kill the champion. Boom, one shot. And then just keep trucking. And then even when we're blind, hey, we've got a sword. It doesn't matter if you can see your target or not. Just keep swinging. Fly into the final boss room. Take out the snipers with a grenade. Pop a barricade for cover. And then you'll see Polaris Lance in its element here, taking out a barrier champion. We just keep getting ammo back because we keep getting crits, and then we get the high damage shot every 5th shot. So this basically gives you an infinite ammo, no reload scout rifle. Very, very good for keeping barrier champs down. And again, blinding grenade to let us close the gap with a sword. Take these guys out with a sword. And then look at this damage number. This is absolutely ridiculous. 586,000 damage. That is with Void Burn on this Lost Sector and with the Nightmare Unstable Essence buff. That gives me a little bit extra damage. But seriously, like that's just a pretty insane damage number for one sword hit. And then here we go, finishing up the Lost Sector in 1 minute, 25 seconds. Not bad for a legendary Lost Sector. Great if you're still trying to farm some of the exotic roles. So hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, would really appreciate the like or the subscribe. Thanks for watching, and catch y'all next time.